Leave that there because the Treasurer, Scott Morrison, is speaking at a function.
Not just a superannuation system, but a retirement system that provides for a dignified and for a very worthwhile future for Australians in their retirement. Now, this is a very exciting conference to be at, a tremendously exciting conference to be at. With the speakers you've had today, I can assure you that I'm not a hologram. You've already had that by another make-believe politician, but one that I think has captured the imagination of politicians and non-politicians alike. I can claim that I've walked Kokoda, but I haven't walked on the moon, so I can't claim to be there with another speaker. And when it comes to the jokes and Stephen Fry, I tend to leave the jokes to our great innovator and fixer, Christopher Pyne. So if you want that, you'll have to invite Christopher next year, who's doing a tremendous job. Christopher is handing down our innovation statement in just a few weeks' time, and we're looking forward very much to that. It's part of the strong national platform for growth and jobs. And what we're doing in the superannuation area, what we're doing in tax, what we're doing with our $50 billion national infrastructure plan that we're rolling out, what we're doing by responding to the financial systems inquiry to ensure a strong and resilient financial system. All of these responses, all of these things we're doing, the trade agreements, balancing the budget, getting the budget back in strong shape, all of this is about ensuring growth and jobs in our economy. Now, we know it's important for us to have a conversation, a discussion with the Australian people, and particularly those of you here in this room, about superannuation and about the principles that will further guide policy. We are in this, I think, very exciting phase where we are open to ideas, where we are listening, where we are engaging and putting forward ideas of our own and having them tested. That's the way you come up with good policy. You do not come up with good policy with a binary, old-style politics discussion. And that is why I particularly want to thank Pauline and Michael for the way they have enthusiastically embraced this new style of conversation, which I think we've been able to open up in the next couple of months. The more options you have, the better you can meet the expectations of the Australian people. The more you dumb it down, the more that you make it a binary proposition, the more that you engage in the sort of conflict style of politics of times past, which, as I've said already in previous addresses, has euthanised public policy debate in this country. Well, I don't think we're serving the Australian people well. And so I really want to thank Pauline for enthusiasm for not only being part of that, but I think being a real industry leader in that process right across the economy. So ASFA also understands the need for this. And so today let me talk a little bit more about our approach and our thinking on superannuation, where we have come from, where we are now and where we may go. Firstly, I want to go back to what super was all about when it was first set up, and particularly the reforms that were introduced first by the Keating government. The objectives of super were devised by Paul Keating and John Dawkins, were varied, but in essence they can be distilled into three key aims. The first was to promote better standards of living in retirement by supplementing or replacing the age pension. For instance, those who have small balances when they can retire can use it to pay down a mortgage or to ensure they can live comfortably on the pension. The second was to curb the rising cost of the age pension, which remains a challenge today. In 2013-14, around 70% of people of age pension age were receiving the age pension, and of these, some 60% received the full rate of pension. However, as Australia's superannuation system matures, many will retire with larger superannuation balances, and as a result, the proportion of full-rate pensioners relative to part-rate pensioners is expected to decrease, but the overall proportion of retirees receiving some form of age pension is not projected to decline. But there will be an inversion between those on a full pension and a part pension. So I think there is, despite the fact there will continue to be a significant proportion of Australians who will have some requirement for the age pension, the reforms which were initiated many, many years ago, initiated indeed by our political opponents, but taken up and continue to be nurtured by governments since, including coalition governments on 2 occasions. And finally, it was also about improving the national savings pool. And on this last point, I think it's fair to say that that objective has been overwhelmingly achieved. Superannuation assets in this country now total about $2 trillion, and they're on their way to $9 trillion. And this highlights that the system has grown and matured significantly and will continue to do so. And of course, there is still some maturation to come as more and more Australians contribute to superannuation from day one of their working life. But in terms of achieving a national savings pool, I think this is one of the objectives that the originators of these schemes can feel very well pleased about. In relation, though, to the first 2 objectives, I think these really do now merge into one. By stating our objective when it comes to superannuation as enabling and also to be independent in their retirement, independent of a welfare payment in the form of the age pension in their retirement. So this brings me to where we might be able to take this going forward. Our view is that we want a super system for the future that delivers greater choice, stronger governance, better information so people can make better decisions, and more targeted incentives to ensure that the system, that the government at the very least, is seeking to support through its actions, is fit for purpose. Encompassing all that, though, is a requirement for stability and certainty. And these are the Turnbull government's core superannuation principles that will shape our thinking and the delivery of what we believe will be real outcomes for Australians who are saving for their retirement and indeed now are living in their retirement years. Greater choice in the superannuation system means funds are more competitive and there is downward pressure is being placed on fees, which is a good outcome for consumers. Just this week I released the government's response to the Harper reforms. And I said about competition, competition is measured by how many choices consumers have, not how many competitors there are. Competition is about the customer. It's about the consumer. It's about the services, the variety of services and products and choices that they have at quality levels and for a good competitive price. It's all about the customer. Greater choice. If funds are governed better, I should also stress, risk is also reduced. The retirement savings of Australians are too important to allow superannuation to become a free lunch for vested interests in this country. Now, in terms of governance, I think we can point to very strong performance of our funds right across the board. And there is no implied criticism in the performance of those funds because, frankly, the funds' performance speaks for themselves. But that can't give us a leave pass, ever, to justify arrangements where we know governance could be better. Every company, every business, every government should always be striving for better and more efficient ways of ensuring proper governance, because that drives the sorts of outcomes for consumers that I've just been talking about. And you know, when consumers have better information, they make better choices and will achieve better outcomes for their retirement. Superannuation is about the superannuant. That's who it's about. It's not about the funds, it's not about the government, it's not about anyone else. Superannuation is about the superannuant. When there are more targeted incentives in the super system, it means that it is fit for purpose in delivering what is intended to achieve. If the incentives are right and the policy settings are stable, Australians will have greater confidence in the system and more independence, we believe, in their retirement. Now, how are we intending to achieve these important outcomes that will set up a superannuation system for the future? The Financial Systems Inquiry, led by David Murray, of course, was one of our key election commitments, and it set the stage for significant reforms, further reforms to superannuation and the broader financial system. Throughout this process, we have consulted with a wide range of stakeholders from various industries. And I would like to thank ASFA and its membership for your ongoing considered, constructive and engaging contribution to that discussion. The Murray Inquiry found that Australia's financial system is performing well. However, it also found that there is room for improvement and made recommendations to better position the Australian financial system for the future. Just because it's good doesn't mean it can't be better. If Peter Costello had taken that view about our financial system long before the strong winds blew of the global financial crisis, we would have never survived it. And so we believe, as he believed and as John Howard believed, that you always must strengthen the resilience of your financial system. In response to the inquiry, last month the Prime Minister and I and Kelly O'Dwyer, the Assistant Treasurer and Minister for Small Business, set out an agenda for improving Australia's financial system which has 5 distinct strategic priorities: strengthening the resilience of the system, stimulating innovation, supporting consumers of financial products being treated fairly, strengthening the capabilities of our regulators and their accountability, and improving the efficiency and operation of the superannuation system. In doing so, to reduce retirement incomes. Now, I know this is of particular relevance to you here today, and as you know, for many Australians, superannuation is the largest financial asset other than their homes. So the performance of the superannuation system has a direct bearing on an individual's retirement income. And I know that's what charges up many of the people in this room. It's an exciting industry to be in, but you are in the role that you play, doing what you do every day. In whatever job you have, there are always sacrifices, there are always demands that take you away from your families and things like this. But I'm sure that the people in this room today and in your offices back where you are enjoy what you do because you are doing something positive for the country by helping Australians to be independent in their retirement. And we want as many Australians as possible to actively plan and save for their retirement and to work towards self-funded retirement. Becoming a self-funded retiree, I think, is one of the most important objectives of any Australian. To actually achieve that in your life, to be independent in your retirement, because that means you have choices, that means you're in control of your lives. Over the course of your lives, you've worked hard, you've saved, you've invested, and then you have the prize of your independence in retirement. You're not having others make choices for you or about you or your life or how you're cared for or these sorts of things. This is a worthy prize to aspire to over a lifetime. And this is why the government is committed to a number of significant superannuation reforms leading from the Financial Services Inquiry. Those reforms, which will be implemented in a staged approach, are all about laying the foundation for a superannuation system in which all Australians can have confidence. Now, as I mentioned at the outset, these new foundations are built on the foundations, very strong ones, of reforms passed, and particularly in the establishment of the scheme. The first relates to governance of the funds. We've introduced legislation requiring a minimum of 1/3 independent directors for superannuation trustee boards and an independent chair for APRA-regulated funds. These changes, which are currently before the Senate and experiencing some interesting debate, ensure that superannuation trustees are making decisions in the best interests of their members, which in turn improves the confidence of Australians may have in superannuation funds. Second, the government is enhancing the transparency and quality of information so members and employers can make more informed decisions when comparing funds. We acknowledge the importance of Australians being empowered to make choices about how to invest in their superannuation savings. If we can help create a more informed superannuation market, then we're also likely to see more competition between funds and greater value for customers. The government will also soon release exposure draft legislation for public consultation, outlining a revised portfolio holdings disclosure model and choice product dashboard regime. We're aiming to strike the right balance between minimising the compliance burden on superannuation funds and enhancing transparency and comparability of information for consumers. Third, we are enshrining the objective of superannuation in legislation, because doing that will not only inspire confidence in the system, it will also provide a valuable yardstick against which to measure competing superannuation policy proposals. When I was Social Services Minister, the pension reforms in the last budget, that's what we did. We set out what the pension was for. The age pension is a welfare payment. It should be there for the most vulnerable. Some 4.1 million Australians rely on that payment, and it's important for its sustainability and its effectiveness in the future that it's targeted to those who need it most. And that means that we need to ensure through our superannuation system that for those who are able to provide for themselves and not rely on that payment, that only helps them, but it helps the millions of Australians who will not be able to achieve that and to whom we have a very serious obligation. So it helps guide policymakers having a clear purpose, and it helps guide industry and the broader community about the real purpose of superannuation. Some of the changes coming out of the Financial System Inquiry focus on improving the efficiency of the superannuation system are there for us all to see. We are committed to improving competition in the default superannuation market. Competition will drive greater efficiencies through downward pressure on fees, as well as improving the quality of products and services for members. The government is committed to doing more to reduce fees and improved after-fee returns for members. This provides protection for Australians who don't engage with their superannuation, as well as providing a sound investment option for members that do. We also want to make sure that our regulatory framework is robust and suits the needs of the superannuation market. On top of that, we are commissioning the Productivity Commission to develop metrics that can assess the efficiency and competitiveness of the superannuation system and to develop alternative models for allocating default fund members to products. The Murray inquiry noted the absence of strong consumer-driven competition in the default superannuation market, which has resulted in fees not falling by as much as would be expected given the increase in the scale of the system. While MySuper has been a strong step in the right direction, more needs to be done to reduce fees.
And that's where we farewell viewers on ABC. If you want to continue watching this, you can do so on ABC News 24.
Agreed to task the Productivity Commission to develop alternative models for allocating default fund members to products. And I invite all to participate in the PC's consultation processes. Following the full implementation of the MySuper reforms, we will then ask the Productivity Commission to review the superannuation system using the efficiency metrics. Now, when it comes to empowering individuals, over the next few years we are also rolling out reforms that help Australians become more engaged with their superannuation with a view to making better choices about how their funds are invested. And we are doing this through a number of measures. And I must say it draws an enormous comparison that I find with the personal income tax system. In the debate we're having about tax at the moment, I'm always surprised to learn that the level of awareness of how much personal income tax people pay these days often has to be recalled to them. When you go to the ATM these days and you pull the money out of the wall, it doesn't say that you've been taxed at 39 cents or at 47 cents already on what's come out. What it does say, though, is here's the cash, and at the end of the year many people get a refund. But I think it's important that we have a better awareness of how the tax system is actually impacting on us and how it is holding us back. And similarly, it is the case, I think, with superannuation and people having an awareness of engagement with their funds. The first, as I said, is to allow more employers to choose the fund that receives their superannuation guarantee contributions. It's staggering to think that there are currently around 2 million Australians with no choice here. And we're talking about their savings, workers' savings. So it's critical, we believe, to give them that choice. This change means that some people who are currently forced to maintain more than one account consolidate their accounts and avoid paying duplicate fees. Enabling this kind of choice will also benefit a significant proportion of women who work multiple casual jobs or dominate industries like retail, where they may not be able to have the choice of a fund. Secondly, we are supporting the development of retirement income products that combine flexibility with better protection against longevity, as well as delivering higher retirement incomes and increased consumer choice. To complement this work, the government is continuing to remove impediments to retirement income product development. Third, we're seeking to improve member engagement by way of better and more accessible information for consumers. For example, by including retirement income projections on members' statements. And we'll be rolling out reforms progressively over the next few years. And at the moment, our focus is on governance reform, transparency and choice of fund. Next year, we'll shift that a little towards enshrining the objective of superannuation and the retirement phase of superannuation. So let's turn now to the future. As everyone knows, the government is carefully considering also the tax treatment of superannuation as part of the tax white paper process. In considering any changes to superannuation, it's important to remember that the tax treatment of superannuation has to be seen in the wider context of retirement income. Above all else, however, we must remember that superannuation belongs to those who have earned it over their working life. It is not my money, it's not your money, it's not the government's money, it's their money. Understanding the purpose of superannuation is critical to this and how we look at any policy changes to the taxation of superannuation. As I've already said, the Financial System Inquiry recommended that the primary objective of the superannuation system should be to provide income in retirement to substitute or supplement the age pension. This is a very good place to start. As indicated in our response to the Murray Inquiry, this is a great place to start. And let me go beyond that. Australia's superannuation system is now an integral part of the financial system. It is a key part of our national savings, as I mentioned. Indeed, it was instrumental in sheltering us from some of the real effects of the global financial crisis. And although our superannuation system hasn't entirely matured, it already provides around 15% of assets for people 65 and over and 1/5 of income for that group. Now, this is set to rise as more people have the opportunity to contribute to their superannuation throughout their working life. But we also need to balance this with recognition that superannuation is a cost to the government in terms of the incentives provided. The cost is increasing as the superannuation system matures, as assets grow and the population ages. Meanwhile, the age pension continues to provide an important safety net for Australians who do not have the ability to provide for their retirement futures. So let's have a look now at the areas that will guide those changes. It's important to remember that there can be conflicting principles, and that's why striking the right balance is difficult but crucial. On one hand, we may wish to reduce reliance, and do, on the age pension. But on the other hand, this comes at a cost by way of providing tax concessions as an incentive to lock away money in super. Other trade-offs include creating the right level of compulsion in the superannuation system while still giving individuals flexibility and choice about what they want to do with their money. There are 4 key areas that I think are foremost in mind when contemplating potential superannuation tax reforms, and they are adequate retirement incomes. Stability and certainty in the retirement phase is something I feel very strongly about. Flexibility and an efficient tax system and growing economy. As I've noted previously, as a government, we want to be very sure that superannuation tax concessions are appropriately targeted so that they secure an adequate retirement income for Australians. But what is adequate? One way to approach this is by using replacement rates, where retirement income is given as a proportion of pre-retirement savings. We could do that by looking at the Mercer Global Pension Index, which suggests that a benchmark replacement rate of 70% is a suitable rate of pre-retirement income for a median earner. Treasury modelling indicates that the median income earner, that is someone earning around $52,000 a year, would achieve a net replacement rate of around 80% under the current retirement income policy settings. Now, this precise replacement rate of super fund balance that might be adequate is also dependent on a range of personal circumstances, as you would all know. Whether someone owns their home, where they own it, and whether or not they have a chronic illness, or just some of the factors that can influence such thinking. So while governments deliver policy solutions to such issues as best as we can, we need to recognise that there is no straightforward answer. There is no cover-all answer to these questions of adequacy, and I particularly think of those who are carers. Let me make one thing very clear, though. While superannuation should ensure adequate retirement incomes, it should not be seen as an open-ended savings vehicle for Australians to accumulate super large balances in a tax-preferred environment well in excess of what is required for an adequate retirement. It is not an estate planning vehicle, nor was it ever intended to be. When Australians see the government supporting the accumulation of enormous superannuation fund balances in a tax-preferred and in retirement a tax-free environment, that does undermine confidence in the system. The issue of confidence now brings me to another area, and that is the stability and certainty in the retirement phase. I think we can all agree that it is vital for Australians approaching and enjoying their retirement that they have confidence in the issues of stability and certainty in that phase. Retirees have saved for their retirement under the existing rules across their working lives about what would be happening in the retirement phase, and the government acknowledges these efforts and sacrifices. So it provides opportunity to all Australians. Because until tax concessions in the superannuation system are perceived to strike the right balance between these issues, there will continue to be calls for tinkering and more changes. The number of changes that occurred under the last government was something that grieved us and we thought undermined stability in the system. And that's why in this term of government we have been so hesitant about making any changes in this term. But we must also understand that while these issues remain unresolved, there will be the need and demand and call for the sorts of tinkering that has plagued the system for so many years. So policy stability and certainty in the superannuation system are definitely important. Nonetheless, there also has to be room for some flexibility in the rules to take modern work patterns into account, such as people taking breaks from the workforce, either through choice or by necessity through the brutality of life's experience. Now, this, of course, includes women and children and people, particularly who have caring responsibilities, who I think are so often left out of that discussion. We do know that that, of course, happens with females in the workforce. But we must not neglect or forget the fact that carers, through no fault of their own, will find themselves in a situation which will seriously put themselves at financial risk in their retirement years, and they are ever present in my thoughts when considering these issues. This is a key goal for the government, and we need to explore whether there are ways to make the superannuation system more responsive to their needs. Individuals and who wish to make catch-up contributions to counteract these broken work patterns. It's all about where we want people to end up, independent in their retirement. As you all know, people will have different journeys to that role. The current superannuation system assumes the same journey for everybody, and we all know that's a nonsense. Everyone takes a different journey to their independence in retirement, and the system needs to understand those different journeys, and it needs to try and support people in those journeys, because the goal is worth it. The goal of independence in retirement is important, not just because of the impacts fiscally, positively, that it has in terms of the cost of the age pension and things like that, but because independence in retirement is a good thing, just as being in a job is a good thing. The government can do lots of things to destroy jobs and to destroy independence in retirement, but it can't do much to replace those things as a position of value in someone's life. And so that's why it's so important that we keep this as our goal. The rigidity of caps and other rules can make it difficult for some to improve super balances. Once an adequate retirement income has been secured, there could also be more flexibility for individuals to choose between consumption opportunities during their working life and compulsory saving for their retirement. Finally, making sure we have an efficient tax system in our economy is so important to support all of these goals. We need a tax system and a growth in our economy that is properly targeted and sustainable. We can't make changes to the superannuation system if the costs of the changes are too high. So an efficient tax system and economy may involve trade-offs with the other principles I've mentioned. For example, are the costs of providing flexibility to individuals with broken work patterns too high? I certainly hope not. Are the tax incentives that help people attain an adequate standard of living unsustainable for the economy? I hope not, and I believe we can work to solutions that ensure that they are not. We must also consider superannuation in the context of the broader economy. Could the costs of providing superannuation tax concessions, for example, be directed elsewhere in the economy to make it work more efficiently, such as personal income tax cuts? Could they, for instance, be directed to that purpose, or to encourage participation in the workforce, or to encourage productivity and growth more generally in our economy? These are very important questions for all of us as we think about the future of our superannuation system. The government is committed to superannuation changes and reform that creates a system that works for all Australians. We want to facilitate this continued dialogue, positive, open dialogue with all Australians, and particularly with you here today, so we have a say in how we bring about these changes that ensure our system can provide higher standards of living for retirees and independence wherever possible. But it's just one piece in the jigsaw puzzle that this government will piece together to back Australians who are working, saving and investing. And it's just one piece in the puzzle that enables us to deliver a superannuation system that is fit for purpose and delivers greater independence and certainty for Australians in their retirement. I want to see a superannuation system that delivers greater choice, stronger governance, better information, more targeted incentives, stability and certainty. And I look forward to working with Pauline and Michael and others in this room here today to get there. Thank you very much for your attention.